there's times in my life where it's like, okay, this is going to now change everything. And that was a really big one. And it's held true. Everything has been different since then in our life in every way.
We'll make it out and fall in love tonight.
On today's episode of the podcast, we're going to be taking you on a journey back a few years to a very significant time period in our lives in relation to our healing journey and basically where we're at today. Truthfully, I think it's one of the most critical time periods in my life and probably in our relationship, I would say.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you say?
It was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
It's a pretty significant shift. I know it changed. Yeah, it changed everything. I feel like I need to sugarcoat it, but it changed everything.
Right? We say that. I don't think we say that often or about a lot of things. We might say it about some things like, not LaCroix. What are we drinking now? We're drinking that lime water.
Topo Chico.
Yeah, the Topo Chico with a little bit of lime.
It's not the same.
Sparkling water. It's changed everything. Our whole life's different now. No, what this is back a few years ago, we went through some therapy. And specifically, it was MDMA-assisted therapy. And we're going to be talking all about that journey and that experience today, because just recently, there's a organization that was founded back in the 80s, and it's called MAPS. And what that stands for is Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Research, Psychedelic Studies. Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And it was founded back in the 80s. And we've been following the journey of MAPS for several years, because that was, I think, probably like 7 or 8 years ago. I got the opportunity to interview Rick Doblin, who's the president and founder of MAPS, for the other podcast that we used to do. And ever since then, we've been kind of watching and following along on the journey of all of everything that MAPS has been doing, because for the past 30 plus years, they have been going through the process of doing clinical studies in order to get MDMA approved through the FDA for treatment of PTSD. Well, everything, because that came through there were several layers, steps. That's the word I was looking for. Several steps in that process. And all along the way, they had all of these hurdles to meet. And then eventually it got to the point where it's within the last few weeks, I don't know exactly when it was, but they had like the final hurdle and the FDA shot it down.
Yeah.
And they denied the request. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to share the benefit and really the life-changing benefit of going through that type of therapy. It's going to bring up a lot for us. It was a difficult time period in our life. And it also, not unpacked, but it also, literally it sparked everything for our entire relationship change, for our life change. It was a catalyst for why we moved and why we're here in Tennessee. So there's a lot to it, and we're going to do our best to kind of unpack it and share it. I did want to share a little bit about, we won't go all into MAPS or anything like that, but I went and researched a little bit. I've read up about it. We follow MAPS and everything like that. And essentially they just, denied their approval or the request, even though it's been a huge, long process, like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And essentially it was just their, claimed that evidence failed to show that the drug was effective or that the benefits were outweighing the risks. So it's kind of BS. I read through as much of the press release stuff as I could kind of muster. And of course, there's a lot of different factors and variables. We're not going to talk a lot about the FDA and all of those type of things. But this is a statement from Rick Doblin. Again, he's the founder and president of MAPS. MAPS and our supporters have been advocating for the development and supporting the FDA-approved research of MDMA-assisted therapy for more than 38 years. Yeah, that's just crazy. And Rick has also been in the field for since the 60s or 70s. He's been in, long time. MAPS will continue working towards safe, legal access to this therapy for more than 350 million people living with PTSD worldwide. Our collective commitment to MDMA-assisted therapy remains unwavering. MAPS remains fully focused on supporting culturally appropriate research, rigorous science, and drug policy reform that empowers citizen advocacy in all areas of the world, including those with high incidences of trauma and limited resources. So if you're not familiar with MAPS, go Google them. It's maps.org. That's their website. See all the work that they're doing. support them in any way that you can, because truthfully, this type of therapy, like we've said, changed everything. So let's just get into it, babe. Unless there was anything that you wanted to lead off with.
Yeah, I definitely want to say, but because we're going to talk about what led us to this was an extensive amount of trauma that we had. And the fact that we're going to be talking about this, talking about our journey with it, there's, like, I'm going to throw the trigger warnings out there. I don't know what we're going to get into yet. I can think of the whole list, and there's going to be extensive topics throughout here that might be really difficult to hear. And so just right off the bat, we're talking about trauma. We're talking about PTSD, CPTSD. We're talking about what it does to you and the different types of trauma that you could experience and the effects that it has and like the harm that you can do to yourself. There's so many different levels here that if you're not in the space to listen, like it's that thing that we say, you know, make sure you're taking care of yourself on that, because, you know, I think we're going to get into it. And I think it's going to be a lot of things, because this, I know for me personally, MDMA is the reason that I feel like that drug saved my life. It has benefited our relationship. It has benefited our lives. I went into it because I could not anymore.
Yeah.
I could not. And it saved my life. And every single person that we have talked to, like every single, I know that they're out there, but it is helping so many people so extensively. And I'm really sad that it's like, I mean, I have my theories of why, but we don't need to get into the theories. What we need to talk about is how powerful and grateful that I am that we had access to this. And I want it to be accessible for all who need it. So there might be some really hard things for you to hear coming up, and maybe not.
Yeah, we'll see, right?
Yeah.
We'll see what we're going to talk about. We haven't talked a lot about, truthfully, we don't really, it's not that we don't talk about the experience of it anymore or that much anymore, but it was such a personal experience for both of us. And we did also do some couples therapy with it as well. And I think we can talk about that as much. We only did one session together, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So we didn't have a lot of experience or a lot of practice in that space. And the individual work that I think we did with our therapists was far more impactful.
Yes.
And yeah, so just to give you an idea, this all occurred back in late 2020, early 2021. And then up until, I think the last session that I had was, I think it was January 2022. Does that seem right?
It seems right, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
I believe so, actually.
It's been a few years.
I believe it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually. I think that was it.
Yeah. And it was all, again, it was under the supervision of a couple of therapists that we found back in Utah that we were able to work really closely with. And they were just incredible. They worked together. It was a man and a woman, and they kind of worked as a team. They were kind enough to come out to our house. So there were days where, you know, it was like a random Saturday where I would go and run errands and go find something to do to keep myself occupied for the day so that you could have your session, and then vice versa on some other random Saturday. So we each had, I don't remember how many sessions I had.
Yeah.
2, 3, a couple of sessions each. And to give you a snapshot of kind of where our life was at that time frame, let's see, we're just out of 2020, which was, for obvious reasons, a challenging time. I don't think that, 2020 was difficult, and everything that kind of happened during that time period, it was really hard. But at the same time, there were some really big shifts that were helpful. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was traveling for work a lot, so I was on the road every month, gone for big chunks of time, home, sporadically. And I had been traveling like that for 4 years. It was a lot. And our relationship had suffered because of it. And 2020 happened, and I got off the road because obviously, apparently they weren't letting people fly anymore. And I don't even remember necessarily the impetus for it, meaning like, do you remember exactly why we seeked out those therapists? Was it just because we knew that it was time for therapy, or was there some sort of catalyst in those moments?
For me, I had actually begun looking for that kind of therapist prior to 2020.
Okay.
And I had found one that had a facility in Salt Lake where she did work out of the facility, and instead of coming to your house, you go to the facility to do it. And I believe it was MDMA. I think she did ketamine, and there was just a couple other. They had a whole, like, it was like a wellness center. It was a whole bunch of things that they provided and offered. And I was really like, again, I was like, I need this. I need something because I can't do this anymore. It's going to win.
Yeah, that's right. You totally knew that, like,
I knew this is what
Yeah.
So I was barreling down that road and found somebody, had a pre-session with them because I was also terrified. Like, I was so scared. This isn't something that I went into lightly. It was, for me, it was like something needs to happen before there's no other options. You know, it was like something needs to happen. I can't do this. And, but I was terrified of it. I was terrified. I was very much, like, I was scared to try anything like that. There was a history that I had as a teenager, and I was too afraid of, like, nothing can go in my body. It was very, very scared. I went into this with a lot of, like, again, it's just like, it wasn't something that I took lightly. And we had a great first session, and I felt a connection with her. I felt a bond, and I felt like, okay, this is something safe that I'm going to go into. I'm going to start taking steps now. And I was terrified, but then she had, I think it was like like divine, that's terrible to say on this one. It worked out for me. She had some medical things that she had to take care of first, and so that delayed it. And there was enough of a delay that I got just a little bit of, like, hesitation that came in, and then the pandemic hit, and so shut everything down, which just stopped that. And then I got into another group that I met somebody that, anyway, so it just, like, the pieces started falling together. So it started in 2019, but the pieces started falling together, which led us to who we had
to
facilitate.
Being able to find our therapist.
I don't know why that was so hard to say.
I know, it's so funny,
I just,
isn't it? We're both so nervous.
I am a little nervous, especially,
It's because it's such a significant, like, it's sharing a personal part of our life that, even though you and I have shared it together with each other, right? And we were definitely present during the experiences of, what we were each navigating during those time frames and everything like that. It's still a really sensitive space.
Yeah.
Because it was deep, deep healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really challenging. Yeah. I'll just kind of do the best that I can to share where I was at. I think I was struggling, you name it, with all sorts of different things. Being on the road a lot had really fucked me up and made things incredibly challenging for me. And what happened was, I wasn't fully aware of all of my issues. I knew that I had PTSD in some form or fashion, right? I knew that I struggled with depression. I knew that I had all of these kind of mental health struggles / issues, but I had never been technically diagnosed with anything. I had never really done any long-term therapy. It was always just a couple of months. Maybe I saw a therapist for a year or something like that over the course of a year back in my 20s, but I never did a lot of work on myself. But I always knew that there was something missing, meaning I had a sense that there was something wrong with me, because all of the actions and behaviors that I was displaying over the course of my life didn't match with, who I saw myself as, or what I thought or who I thought that I was. And after getting fired from being a cop in 2015, that was another big catalyst moment of just kind of going off the rails and losing all sorts of stability for my mental health. It was really, really a hard time period. You know that. You were present. What were you going to say?
That was, well, it's not just getting fired, right? I mean, that's a thing, but there's, like, you did that, like you were that. It was a huge piece of your identity that just was another completely rocking you to your core.
Yeah, and there was trauma from that, from being a cop. I was in law enforcement for like 8 years, and there was a lot of unprocessed stuff from that experience and the things that I had to go through and witness and kind of, just go through an experience. And I hadn't done any processing with that, but I always knew that there was more to do with my past. I just never could get at it. It's like I had I was going to say unwavering, but I had a sense my whole life that there was just something in my past that I could not shake. And no matter how many times I would try to look at it, or how many times I would talk through therapy or go through different things, or, read different books or listen to different podcasts, it was always really elusive. And when we finally found these people and started to build a relationship and a rapport with them, so what it was my therapist, I would have individual sessions with him. I don't remember how many we did, but we did a handful of individual sessions, and then all of it was leading up to doing the first session with MDMA. And there's a whole protocol in place that MAPS has laid out over the years with all of their research that they've done and all of their clinical studies. And when it's done using those protocols, and it's not to say that it can't be done other ways in a safe way, but it's one of those things where if it's done under supervision and with people who are trained to do it, it has the potential to really heal and change things. And that's how we lucked out. So my therapist and Steph's therapist, they worked together. They came out to the house, and I went through my first session of it. And I had never done MDMA before. I didn't have a lot of experience doing any drugs other than like marijuana and alcohol and nicotine and gambling and sex and shopping and food and adrenaline and dopamine and all the other things that I was addicted to over the course of my life. But I had never done this one specifically, so I didn't really know what to expect. And it's very strange. It's such a weird experience. So they come out to the house and they chill and hang out, and it's like they're sitting with you as you're going through this journey and through this experience. And so I take the dose in the morning, and they start, they come over really early in the morning, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And then it's a several hour long process because you're going through the experience. And a lot of it is just me laying there talking, just getting comfortable. And they weren't really asking a lot of questions necessarily, more or less just a lot of listening, some guidance in regards to kind of what was coming up. And, and in the beginning, in the first couple of sessions that I did, it was a lot of trying to figure out, it's almost like trying to wade through the shadows and going through the stuff. I remember talking a lot about our relationship and what was going on in our relationship at the time, because we had a bunch of crazy stuff that was going on in our relationship. We don't have to get into all of that, but there was a lot that had happened and gone on and was kind of taking center stage in my mind as far as like what was important to me. I mean, our relationship was important to me, but also all the things that were influencing and shaping our relationship at the time and affecting it. And a lot of that had to do with the choices that I had made over the course of our relationship. And one of the things that I've always struggled with is sex. And it's been the coping mechanism from childhood that I would use to cope and manage with stress and with any sort of discomfort. And so that's looked different over the course of my life, and that's looked different over the course of our relationship. But at the time when I'm going through this therapy, we had several years of struggling with those choices and decisions that I made in regards to like infidelity and cheating on you and some other decisions that were connected to and surrounding sex and choices like that. And dealing with those ramifications were really difficult, obviously. But I don't want to say we were like through it, but we were getting through it and we were navigating it. So a lot of the early stages of this therapy were kind of processing through a lot of that stuff. And I don't remember if it was the first or the second one, but there was one of the sessions where it's almost like enough had been processed through about our stuff that I was starting to get into earlier stuff, and I was starting to get into childhood stuff. I mean, processing things in regards to like my dad and my mom and my siblings, and I've got 2 older brothers. I got to take a drink, babe.
Yeah. No, I understand that. There was a lot of processing. I'm excited to like hear about that. Like, so you started off first going through our stuff. You started the top layers, and then after you started navigating that, then you were able to go deeper. Is that correct?
I think so. I think, a lot of it is hazy. Like, I don't have the clearest remembrance of not just timelines, right? Timelines are so messy. I have no idea of like dates and times. And that's why it's like, I think it was the end of 2020, right? First session was probably sometime in 2021. And then we did 3 or 4 sessions. And then the last one was in 2022. And when I started to really go back, like I said, I was doing a lot of processing about my parents and my relationship with my parents. I had done a huge chunk of that work with my dad, meaning processing through my relationship with my dad and the dynamics between him and everything like that. Like, him and my mom got divorced when I was 14. He wasn't very involved in my life as a child growing up. And then far less once they got divorced and he moved out and everything like that. And then just a real tumultuous relationship with him over the course of my life, where it was never really the relationship that I wanted. And I did a lot of work processing through that during like 2017, 2018, 2019, because I did a lot of men's work, and obviously the association with your dad and men's work and getting into all of those kind of things. So I had a good understanding of what that relationship was. But I had done next to nothing in regards to the relationship with my mom. And our therapists did a really good job of just being in those spaces with me. And I'm trying to describe, let's see if I can describe what it feels like. It feels like I wasn't, I was very lucid through the whole experience, right? Sometimes people will, I don't know if they necessarily fall asleep, but some people will like blindfolds on and laying down and blankets, and it's just this very relaxed environment and things like that. I didn't have music on. I may have put on some meditation music or something relaxing in the background, but a lot of talking. A lot of me kind of laying on the couch, upside down, feet up in the air, just kind of like chilling on the couch talking, and just feeling incredibly relaxed, just really, really relaxed and able to speak freely. And in that, over the course of all of these sessions, started to really unpack and process some of this stuff in relationship to my mom. And I have this, now I can see it for what it was, but prior to this experience, I didn't have a really good understanding of how unhealthy that relationship was. And it was super unhealthy. And my mom has a ton of narcissistic traits. She's really emotionally immature. She's got, her whole list of things that she's displaying or has displayed over the course of my life. And through the course of this therapy, which part of me feels like I'm not doing it justice, because like it's the way that I look at it and the way that I kind of explain it to people that speak with these type of terms and speak in this way is it's like doing really deep shadow work, but you're not afraid. Like it's not hard. sometimes if you're trying to do shadow work and even just like deep therapeutic processing of trauma, it's really challenging because it sparks so many different somatic things in your body. You've got so many defensive mechanisms in place that are telling you don't talk about these things, don't go towards these things. And there's also like emotions and experiences that were repressed and that were shut down because of dissociation and all sorts of different things. And I had all of that.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know that, right? I didn't really have awareness of that. But when I'm on the MDMA and I'm in that space and the therapists are just like beautifully holding space and kind of helping me navigate all of it, a lot of that stuff started to come up, and I was able to see things differently, understand things in a different way than I ever have before. And I really started to see my mom in a different light than I ever really had. And it was really challenging and really hard because I was incredibly enmeshed with my mom, and the relationship between her and I was not healthy in any way. But I didn't know that. And eventually I got to a point where I had awareness that there was abuse in my past that involved my mom. And this happened during one of these sessions. I think it was probably the last session where everything just started to like click and fall into place. I was going through and articulating and expressing and communicating all of like these incredibly shameful experiences that I've had over the course of my life, but also in childhood. And a lot of them were things that I was really ashamed about in relationship to sex or sexual or acting out sexually, and all the way back into childhood. And I'm talking about them and processing them and putting pieces together and suddenly having the awareness of where all of it had started. And when those connections were made inside of my brain, inside of my body, it was just like this huge moment of the veil of secrecy and doubt and shadow was suddenly just washed away. And I saw clearly my life. And I saw what had taken place when I was a child. And I saw how that all basically shaped and molded the rest of my life moving forward, including behaviors, actions, coping mechanisms, relationships, all of these things stemming from this situation from being a kid. And it was a huge aha moment. It was a huge revelation. And then after the fact comes the processing, right, and sitting with it. And that was one thing that our therapists were really good about, like post care as well, right? Because these sessions would last 7 or 8 hours sometimes, and then like eventually they got to leave. And then they also did a good job of, my therapist did a great job of, checking in and following up after the fact and having some just regular therapy sessions afterwards. But having this new awareness of my life and the trauma that I experienced that had previously been kind of, repressed, it changed everything. And it immediately became like, oh, I need to change. Like, this is clear to me where things started. Suddenly I had pieces put together, and then it was like almost immediately, I don't remember exactly when, but it wasn't long after that, I communicated to my mom. I sent her a text message and I told her that I was going through some of the deepest, trauma work that I'd ever done before in therapy, and that for the time being, I was going to stop communicating with her, and just stopped. So I sent her that text and I told her, I'm like, I'll let you know. I think in the text I verbalized or articulated that I would like let her know if I wanted to communicate. And that was in January or February of 2022. And I haven't talked to her since. And that has been one of the hardest things that I've had to go through, in a sense. but then also one of the most freeing things that I've had to go through. And so not having any contact with her since then, and then we sold our house the same year and moved to Tennessee. And we've been here in Tennessee for like a year and a half. And it's been a roller coaster ride of, oh my goodness, my hip, of kind of, processing all of it still, because it's still something that is ongoing. It's one of those things that I have awarenesses on a regular basis of different things. And, I'm still doing tons of inner child work. Looking for the perfect gift for someone that you love? Try thinking beyond the material things and get them the most unique, unforgettable gift possible. A custom song from Songfinch. Songfinch lets you create an original studio quality song inspired by your own life and the ones you love. It's completely unique, personal to you and your story, and will last a lifetime. Songfinch walks you through an easy 4-step process to create your original song. Just tell them who the song's for, provide some personal details about your story, and let them know the type of song that you want. Then pick your favorite Songfinch artist, or get matched with one. They'll write, record, and produce your custom song in just 4 to 7 days. Head over to our website. It's stephandcraig.co and click on the link for Songfinch. When it comes time for checkout, use the code Steph and Craig. You're going to save $20 off your order. Once you get your custom song, be sure to tag us because we want to hear it. We're probably a lot like you, where we had some pans that had been kicking around our kitchen since we met, actually. They're over a decade old, and it was time for them to go. Lucky for us, we found Heritage Still. Heritage Still offers premium cookware that's made right here in the USA. It's actually made here in our backyard in Tennessee. We ditched our old pans and we got ourselves an entire set of Heritage Still. All of their cookware has 5-ply construction, which gives you superior heat distribution and retention when cooking. They also offer a lifetime warranty, which is really hard to find nowadays. Their cookware is versatile for all cooktops. We have a gas range and we absolutely love the way our Heritage pans heat up. They're chemical-free, oven-safe, easy to clean, and Heritage Still is committed to sustainability. They use environmentally conscious practices when producing their cookware. For listeners of the podcast right now, you can save 10% on your order. Head over to heritagestill.us/Steph and Craig, and don't forget to use the code Steph and Craig at checkout to save that 10%. But what's really neat is that I feel like I have all the pieces now. Yeah. Whereas before, when I would try to go back and work on different, experiences or thoughts or memories, or going back and trying to process things, it was trying to put together things without all the pieces. And MDMA really helped me collect and get all of those pieces and give me, I don't want to say closure, but just understanding of myself and my life and my experiences that I had never had before. And then since then, it's been the work of, okay, how do I change, knowing now what I know, the maladaptive behaviors that have stemmed from childhood that we're still navigating and experiencing in adulthood, that I'm still navigating and experiencing in adulthood. Also, how do I heal the wounded parts of me that still exist from childhood, from, my teenage life, my teenage years, all of it. And it's not easy, obviously. We talk about it all the time on the podcast in various ways and all the different things that we've done. But truthfully, it all leads back to that therapy for me, because prior to that, I had never had an experience like that. And I haven't had an experience like that since. I've done a lot of psychedelic stuff since then, both with like psilocybin. And then I think marijuana is a psychedelic and can be used for good therapeutic work as well. And I've done a lot of both of those things since then. And it's amazing to me the healing that has occurred and the difference that I feel in my body today. But also, I feel like I'm way more emotionally, not just open, but connected to my emotions, way more aware of my behaviors. I mean, I feel like I shifted and changed so many things because of that, like probably more than I know, because some of them are unconscious, right? There's plenty that I was like, okay, doing this differently, making this change, showing up differently in our relationship, showing up differently in my life for myself, all of these kind of things. And then I'm sure, like I said, there's probably a ton that I just don't have awareness of that took place kind of underneath the surface, and they're still kind of happening. So it's been a few years since, obviously, like we were saying, last time was in 2022, and we're coming up on the end of 2024 soon, but life-changing.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you immediately started setting boundaries. It was really incredible in so many different areas when, like, because I have the part of where I got to witness you, like not during that session, I wasn't, but what happened after when I got home and when you were able to speak with me, and it's a process to try and integrate all that. That integration process is intense when you have the awareness of everything that just happened and everything. And you came out and you started setting boundaries, like that text message that in other areas, you're like, this is a boundary, and you just set them and held them. It wasn't a wavering, not that it wasn't hard, right? I'm not saying, oh, it was just easy for you to set boundaries, but you had the strength and you had the courage and you had the ability and the skills and the support. And you just started setting boundaries and making different choices for yourself and how you treated yourself. And it was such an experience to watch you navigate and to go through something that deep, something that big. And like the pieces of you, how you said it, like you had all these pieces now. And it's like I don't know what show, where they're up and they have the screen, right? And they're moving the stuff and all the pieces.
Minority Report.
Is it Minority Report?
Where he's got and he's moving anyways.
Probably. I don't know. But it was like that's what it looked like watching you from there. You were just like always, you were like working. You're like, here, as you said, this veil had came off of you and you were clear. It was hard. And you definitely would try at times to put the veil back over. There were times when you're like, no, this can't be. And you would try to, but there was like this calm gentleness that you had with yourself where you would speak about it. You would give yourself like time to, like, whether you're talking to your therapist, sometimes you would talk to me, and just you started learning how to move through your life with love for yourself. And you started practicing self-love. You started practicing in those little doses, in those moments, how to be kind to yourself, how to trust yourself, how to be like healthy for yourself. That you started, it was a really terrible thing that you had to go through, but to watch you, like, that can't be changed. What happened with what you did with it, what you did with the pieces, was a really magical thing to watch you, like, start to care for yourself, start to heal, start to nurture yourself in that way and protect yourself. You were protective, and not in a like you were protective in this confident way. You were just like Neo, and you're like, no. And it was really a lot that I got to witness you do in that space. Yeah.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. It was so much fun, wasn't it?
You're right.
Such a great time.
That's one way we can describe it, right? It was just, it was fun.
Yeah, it was so hard. Yeah, part of the reason why we moved to Tennessee was we lived in the same town. It's the same town that I grew up in, and my mom still lived in that town. And it was just really, really difficult for me to go anywhere anymore in town because of the risk of running into her and seeing her. And so it was like, I had to get out of that fucking town.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did. I think that was a huge deal. Mm. And coming here to Tennessee, it's like, healing takes place over the course of like a lifetime. And I see all the little steps along the way of the different components that led up to me being able to even do that type of therapy.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't ready for it, 2 years prior, 4 years prior, 5 years. It was like, it happened when it needed to happen. And since then, there's been just as many other little tiny healing steps along the way. Like you talk about or you mentioned, self-love and standing up for myself. And suddenly I think one of the things that it helped with was this idea that not only was I worthy of love, but that I could protect myself from everything. But like, it's because it's not just protecting myself in the moment, like, as an adult, I was protecting a smaller version of me. I was protecting that version of me that had always been there all along the way, but had never been really seen or heard or validated. And in that session, it was like, yes, I was speaking. I was the one that was verbalizing things. I was the one that was kind of processing things. And that's one of the really neat things about MDMA too, is it's like, and I think it's why it's so well suited for PTSD, is going back into your recesses of your mind and back into your psyche and into your shadow and fleshing some of those really difficult things out. They are so triggering that your body will react the same way as if you were going through those experiences. And so a lot of what I would do as a child, and I still do as an adult, is dissociate. And with the assistance of not just the therapists, but also the medicine, it was like I was able to stay present and witness and watch and experience and talk through and have the pieces fit, and then recognize like, oh, it's almost like a different part of me was speaking. It's like some of the deepest inner child healing work that I've ever done. And then after the fact, it was like, oh, I'm gonna fucking protect that part of me no matter what.
Yeah.
Like that part of me never has to be silent again. That part of me never has to like go back into the recesses of the shadows. And no, that part of me is always going to be okay now. And that involved hard decisions.
Yes.
But we're able to do it.
You
Thankfully.
were able to do it.
I was so thankful for you all along. Like that was the other thing that I think was such a huge gift, was you and I, and I don't know if it was just because we had done so much work up to that point, but it was like, I really don't think it was anything other than just like grace, like the universe doing what the universe does, because we both did such a good job of just supporting each other in the process of what we were each individually going through. So you got all the space to go through what you needed to go through and experience. And I just was there in the most supportive way possible. And then simultaneously, you were doing the same thing for me. And I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something I'm super grateful that we had the opportunity, we had the means, we had like the timing of it all, right?
Yes.
Where it was like, part of the reason why it took place at our house was because, like you were saying, right, COVID shut down a lot of different things. And so it wasn't an option to go to an office or to a facility or to a place. It was like, yeah, we'll just come out to your house and do it in your living room. I'm like, fucking, let's do it.
Okay.
Sounds good to
Right?
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there anything that I'm missing?
Anything that you're missing?
Well, you know what I mean? Like part of it's like, I'm trying to think back, and I don't think there's anything that I'm missing that I wanted to share or that I wanted to speak to. I mean, I could just sit here and go on and on about how different I feel. Like I definitely feel changed. It's a significant trajectory. Like, I always think about things from that beautiful Robert Frost poem of Two Roads Diverge, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a moment where everything was different after that fact. There's times in my life where it's like, okay, this is going to now change everything. And that was a really big one. And it's held true. Like everything has been different since then in our life in every way.
Yes. I don't, like, as far as like anything that you've missed, you don't have to, like, you're not doing anything wrong.
Check the list. Did I get
right?
it all?
You're not doing anything wrong. You don't have to, like, this isn't your one time that you get to talk about it. You have time to talk about it. We can talk about it again. We have a platform.
That's true. We do have a
but you're not
podcast we
doing
can talk
anything
about it on.
wrong, and like you did a really good job. And as more things come to you and you want to speak more, then you have a mic. You have a mic, and I will listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, baby.
Okay.
It's your turn.
Oh, but you did so beautiful.
I know, right? Now the podcast is over. That's all the experience that we've had. No, I think it's beneficial to hear yours.
Okay, well, suddenly my mouth just got very dry, so I also need a drink. Do you want to like take it from here?
Yeah, take a drink, babe. Take your time.
Okay, I think I have to go pee too, so.
There's no rush. It's hard. It's like I said, it's one of those moments in time where, you know, those experiences that I had basically took place in our living room with two other people who were witnesses and present for it. But a lot of it was just, I mean, I shared with you the cliff notes of things so that you had an understanding, and it was important, I think, for you to have an understanding so then you kind of knew what was happening and what I was navigating. And also, you know, I didn't share a ton of stuff with you. Like, it wasn't all the details of everything. It was just like, yeah, this is what's come up, and this is what's happened, and this is what I'm doing, and this is where we're going. And
yeah, it's not meant for you to then have to disclose everything to your, like, you know, it's a very personal journey. It's a very, very personal journey that I think it's really important that it's that personal. It's not promoting secrecy or any of that, but you have to feel safe. You have to know that your container is safe, that it's going to be held, that it's not going to be spilling out. You have to know while you're going into something so vulnerable that it gets to be safe. And if, like, it's totally, like, it's healthy. It's so healthy that you didn't share everything with me, right? And you shared what you wanted to and what you felt, not just like what you wanted to or where you felt like you needed support, right? You shared what was appropriate for you to share. And what wasn't appropriate for you to share, you had your therapist, you know, you had support on that. And that's a really healthy boundary. And that itself is something that sometimes people struggle with. And they feel like they are supposed to they're supposed to disclose everything, or else, you know, they didn't have privacy. They didn't have boundaries. Anonymity. Not that they didn't have boundaries, but like the lesson that they had growing is that they weren't allowed that. So it's like, instead of being able to put a lock on your door for privacy or something, right? You know, it was like there was no doors, you know, kind of a thing. So to be able, that is another way to protect yourself. And that it's like, I get to choose what I'm comfortable sharing with whoever about my life, my experiences, my journeys. I don't owe anybody else a full disclosure of my every thought, of my every experience. I'm allowed privacy, and I get to choose what I share. And then that becomes the boundary that you learn into practice. But so that was like, it's a really, to have that space. We are lucky that we could show up like that for each other. And yeah, that's hard, you know, that's really hard. And
yeah, it was so hard.
Again, it was like, I like that you said too, you know, we done so much work up to that, because it wasn't something that we just started with. It was so much work up to that.
Yeah.
You know, this is why, like, this piece is so crucial. This piece is so crucial. This piece is
I think all the work that I did during all that men's work, because it was like, I mean, I've talked about it on the podcast before, but I went on this big, long, week-long men's retreat. And then after that, I started a men's group that met every week. And then I did a bunch more retreats and facilitation training and all sorts of different stuff. And all of that did huge, like, that laid the groundwork for me to actually start connecting to my emotions, which I think was super critical. Because prior to that, I was very much like a lot of men, just analytically analyzing and looking at things and problem solving things and not feeling things. And so that laid the groundwork. Like, you know, looking back, we talk about this all the time too, but being able to go back and look at all the interconnecting pieces that led up to an event or up to an experience, this is exactly that, where there were so many key things that took place and that had to take place in order for us to end up where we were at.
Yes.
Same thing today, right?
Same thing today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's paint the picture of your experience of what was kind of taking place for you, if you want, obviously, right?
Yeah.
You get to speak and share what you want.
I get to share what I want to share. So I started off with talking about how I started this journey. So we've got there, come to the point of where now I'm connecting with this therapist, and we're connecting over Zoom. Like, we're starting these calls there, because you have to get to know them. They get to know you. Is this a fit? It's this whole, process thing that you go through. And for me, it was like, I need to feel safe enough to do this. And it took a while. This person was amazing, and I felt really safe with them. And just, it's amazing the amount of work that you can do with somebody who's like, I don't even know the words right now. Like, it started before it started. It's like when you're going to go into something, you make the choice, then your body's already preparing. It's like, I'm going to compare it to ice baths, right? Your body's already, when you make the decision, your body's already preparing. And so the decision was already made, and my body started preparing. So all the things that started happening and leading up to this was a preparation and taking me to this space. And I don't remember what how it happened in a sense, but with my first session, it was just her. Which was, because she was going to bring, her partner out, the one that, but I don't remember if he got sick or something, but it was this, are we still going to go through with it? And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this with a man there. I did not, I was so hesitant, and we had like prolonged, and I don't even know how many sessions we did before we even did the first in-person session.
Yeah.
Or a long session. And of course there wasn't well, he has to be there. That would have been like end call,
Yeah.
I would not have handled that, but it was just like, I didn't want to, I knew this was an opportunity, and I wanted to be safe, but I wanted it, so it was like, it was trying to find where I was at. And when I was like, okay, I can do this, something, he got sick or something and wasn't going to make it out. And it was perfect. Again, that universal divine, that it was just her and I. And that was like really risky for her too. Like, we were taking these chances, but they take chances on us too. Like, they're trusting us as much as we're trusting them in this space. And she came to the house, and we were upstairs. I started upstairs because I had to like be in my safe space in a cave, in a corner, and the place where I felt the safe in the house. And I was so scared. Like, I remember when it came time to take the dose, I was so scared. And she did a beautiful job at helping me feel safe through that. Cause I'm like, what if it's not this? Like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if I can handle it. And when I first tasted it and took it, it sent my body into almost hysteria. And this, like, another reason why it's so important to have somebody there that's supporting you through it. And I just panicked. The taste of it, I thought it was like, I reverted to, teenage. I'm like, what did I just do? I'm like, and then it was like, I'm going to die. I just took, my body I'm going to die. This is going to kill me right now. And then I was also like, what if it's this? I suddenly wasn't trusting the medicine. And she was just fantastic on not only the rationale that she had, the calmness, but she's like, even if it's this, I can walk you through this. Even if it's this, I've got you. And she did such an amazing job of like holding me, in a sense, holding me together when I was going into my most vulnerable and shattering into a million pieces right in front of her. And somehow she just could hold me together in that step. I couldn't have done that on my own.
Yeah.
I could not have done that on my own. And so then I started calming, and then it was the waiting game. What's it going to feel like? What's it, And then it's because what it does is it drops you into your body. when you're dissociated, when you have all these parts, it drops you into your body and you have access to your memories. You have access to what you're really feeling. You have access behind the wall. It's like the curtains come down, the lights come on, or that everything you just have access to, you can see. And when you've experienced a lot of time completely dissociated, hiding, blinding, shielding yourself from everything to make your reality survivable, that having access is terrifying.
Yeah, it's a little overwhelming.
Getting into your body is terrifying. And when I first started to feel it, and I was like, I think it's happening. And then I could feel like the shift in my body. And again, another completely fucking meltdown.
Really?
A complete panic that, again, she held me together in those spaces.
Do you think it was just the feeling of actually being able to feel your body now? Is that what caused the second kind of meltdown, or?
It became not only being able to feel my body, but I learned before when it was using drugs or alcohol or other things to dissociate, to like make things tolerable.
Okay.
Right. And then other things that were given at times to make me unable to protect, so there's just this whole thing of where I'm careful. Like, I don't want to, I need to have control of my body, of my emotions. I need to know I've got me. And I don't want to not have control around people I don't trust, around people. Like, I need to be in control. I need to know that I'm safe, because I don't want, something else to be tacked onto the list. I don't.
That makes sense.
As soon as I could tell that I was very much like shifting, like I could feel the shift, I could feel the dose taking effect. I didn't feel in control of my body. All of, like, we've talked about IFS. So all of my parts, my managers were like, we are losing control now. We don't have this. We're not controlling the ship. Alert, alert. Everything was firing at that moment. And she did such a good job. Like, just those two things, the taking the medicine and then when it started to take effect, were terrifying. They were so terrifying. And which is like, it was such an event in that space itself. And again, she did such a good job of holding me together to where you start talking. You start talking these things that come up. There was a lot of things that I had the pieces for, but what it felt like, it was like, your junk drawer. Like, you have a junk drawer, right? And there's all this shit in it. And some things you know what it is, and some things you're like, who put this there? What is this? I don't even know what it is. What does it do? What is it? I don't feel like this goes here.
What's this cable for? I don't remember what this cable is. Yeah.
Like, what does, you think it's a bottle opener, but it's a, I don't know, use your imagination. Something else. What you think it is something different than what it is. So I felt like I had this junk drawer of things that I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it meant. I thought it meant one thing and the other, and it started to dissolve the illusion of what, they're like, no, this isn't this. This means this. So the pieces were becoming clearer. I was being able to see through the filters and understand, oh, this is what this is. This is something that was really painful. This is something that actually isn't okay. This is something that was really bad. This is, understanding what was happening, and then being able to process these things, being able to it's like, when you have the PTSD, when you have the flashbacks, when you have your body's in the moment and you're triggered and you can't tell whether you're in the present or the past, or you're just in the experience and you're reliving it in the experience. That is why there's so many, it's so hard to get through on your own. But what happened with the MDMA is that I became a witness to it. I was still experiencing, but I wasn't overtaken by it. I don't know. It's almost like I got to go back into the moments, and I was reliving them, but I was also not alone. had somebody that was there with me, and I was feeling them instead of like that it happening too. I was able to process it. I know I don't have the words for this right now.
You know what it's reminding me of
What
as you're
is it?
describing it? Because I felt the same way, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the, I think it's not A Christmas Story. What's the Charles Dickens?
Like A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Like
where he's going back and seeing scenes from his life play out and understanding all the different components of it.
I can
That's
totally
kind of what
see
it was
that.
like.
I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy for that.
So if you haven't heard yet, we picked up pickleball and we're having a blast. It's super, super fun. And if you haven't started playing yet, I hope that you do soon. And if you do, we want to help you by avoiding what we did. See, when we started playing pickleball, we just went on Amazon and found some paddles that looked cool. Little did we know, but they actually were hurting our pickleball game and holding us back from being the absolute best pickleball players that we could be. And when we found out that there was a pickleball paddle company here in Tennessee, actually not too far from where we live, we got super excited. Element 6 was started by a couple of brothers who were passionate about the sport and decided to go in and make their own paddles because they needed something that served their purposes a little bit better. Lucky for us, they're now sponsoring the podcast. And I can tell you from experience that their paddles definitely make a difference. The very first time I picked up their paddle and just held it in my hand, I knew I was going to be a better pickleball player as soon as I started playing with it. And it turns out I totally am. They have paddles for everybody, for the beginner, the intermediate, and the pro level. Head over to our website, stephandcraig.co, and click on the link for E6 pickleball paddles. I highly recommend their brand new one, the Torrent, which is what we play with. When you're ready to buy, make sure to use the code Steph and Craig. Not only will you save 10%, but the guys over at E6 are also going to send you out a free gift along with your order. So pick up pickleball, pick up a new paddle from Element 6. We hope to see you on the court soon. Not too long ago, I went down the rabbit hole of trying to find us some new clothes that didn't have all sorts of toxic stuff in them. I was tired of wearing synthetic material when I worked out, when I did things like jiu-jitsu and yard work and hiking and everything like that, because it wasn't really breathable and it started to stink a lot as well. Well, lucky for me, I found Woolly clothing. Woolly uses natural merino wool, and I'm a huge fan. All of their clothes are super soft and they feel really, really good next to your skin. Their clothes are naturally moisture repellent, so when you're wearing them and working out, it almost feels like it's cooling you off. They're also odor resistant, so they don't stink after you wear them. They have a great line of men and women's clothing, and if you've never tried merino wool, I highly recommend Woolly. I've got their boxers on right now. Every episode of the podcast, I wear one of their V-neck shirts. I'm really excited for when the weather starts to change and it starts to cool off a little bit, because then I get to put on my Woolly hoodie again. Head over to our website at stephandcraig.co and click on the link for Woolly. And when you're ready to check out, be sure to use the code Steph and Craig. You'll save 15% on your order. Show them some love and get yourself a great pair of merino wool socks or underwear, or boxers, shirts, pants, shorts, tank tops, workout gear, you name it, Woolly has it.
There were definitely parts that, like, in another, like, part of that happened is you're not able to, like, sometimes when traumatic things were happening, you weren't able to cry out. You weren't able to defend yourself. You weren't able to, like, you had to leave so you couldn't react in the moment.
Yeah.
And re-experience, I was able to react. There was, at one point, because it was like, it was an in and out, you know, you kind of like, you go through a cycle and then you get a break, and then you go through a cycle and you get a break. She was like, another wave's coming, another wave is coming. And so it naturally gives you this cycle. It's a very cyclical experience. And then as the waves come in, you have an experience, and the waves come out and you get a break, and it's a minute of integration. And then you're like, okay, I'm in the room. Here's my incredible therapist who is, like, I'm pretty sure they're like an angel, like straight, like there's no way that in my brain that like a person could handle this. And then you go back into another one. But at one point when I came out, I was huddled in the corner in the fetal position, and I couldn't put my arm down for the longest time because my arm was up shielding myself and like trying to push things away. And I was just like in this hysterical moment, which seems terrible, right? On one hand, it seems terrible, but that's how I had been feeling. That's what that part of me was stuck there and never got to express. So being able to just scream, to cry, to push away, and just like feel that, allow that emotion out of me, allow that experience, my body to do that thing that it needed to do so bad, but it could never do, and was told it didn't need to do it, and I shouldn't be thinking, all of these things, to be able to go through that motion. That release was so powerful. And so like, not in the moment, I wasn't like, oh, this is so good. I was like, what the fuck is happening? And then it's like the embarrassment. I'm so embarrassed. I don't know what just happened. I just lost control. I just had all of these emotions in front of somebody.
Yeah.
And she's like, again, holding the pieces together. Your guide there holds the pieces together. So I couldn't access that on my own. What I could do is be triggered. I could be in a flashback. I could start to think that things around me were meaning the same thing, and then I would go into dissociation. I might have a flip out, but it wasn't a process. It was a complete like spiraling out. But I would then dissociate, and then I would go into fawning. I would go into apologizing and making it better and trying to caretake, even if it was a traumatic event that now compiled on, or a non-traumatic event that had the meaning. Because you don't know when they're coming. You don't know what's happening. You're having a fine moment and you smell something, you hear something, it just happens.
Yeah, it's the whole thing where your nervous system can't differentiate between memory and reality. Right. Something will trigger that thing, and then the next thing you know, you're in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response unconsciously, because your nervous system is like, okay, we know what to do here. Mm-hmm. You're having this thought, you're having this experience. You might even just be having the emotion of the feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So like, that's like, mine started out with like mine started out really little. Well, they were like, we have been waiting. Mm. Like, here's the things here's cores that we need to go right to. And there were some really terrible, terrifying moments that there are moments that I knew were bad, right? But I didn't know how to feel them. And to be able to actually like feel them, and then have compassion and be able to like have love to go for myself as that little girl who was experiencing those things, to feel held by somebody safe in that moment. And that makes it sound like she's just hugging me the whole time. No, she stayed on the other side of the room. I couldn't handle touch. I couldn't handle any of that. And that's also something else that's discussed beforehand. If you can handle, you get to control the whole situation, and they keep you safe for it. But there was she was on the other side of the room and right next to me, holding me together at the same point. It was really, really amazing. So I went through all this inner child stuff. I went through and finally was able to process. And not once did I hear, oh, it wasn't really that. It wasn't that bad. You should feel sorry for all of the things that, oh, that didn't all of the things, right? It was like to be seen, heard, and validated and supported and kept safe in that moment. And there were times that it was just like she would just let me, I don't even know how the words for it, but the amount of healing that took place for me in that first session was lifetimes. It was my entire, all of this. I thought we were going to talk about you. I thought it was going to be a session to where, I don't think you came up once. It was just, oh, we need to go to some trauma, some tiny trauma. That's what my body was so ready.
Right.
Was so ready. My body was like, finally, we can do this. We can get this out. And I remember something weird after, because this is just like one session. My whole life changed after one session. And I remember seeing myself in like the mirror of something. And I was like, I thought I looked brighter. It was weird. I thought I looked brighter. And I was like, I looked different to myself. And then I think I Marco'd my sister at some point, and she was like, you look brighter. And you told me, like, it looks like years came off of you. It was like there was such a release that it physically shifted me. And my brain, like, to say that right now is just kind of like, holy cow, that I physically changed. It was such an emotional change, so much in there that I literally physically changed in that moment. And like, I don't even know what to say about that yet, right? There's still this whole point of
it's
immense,
crazy. It's crazy what our bodies will hold on to,
right?
and the weight of what that is and what that does to us. Yeah. It's really crazy.
I remember this is kind of funny, but because there was such that after my second session, I remember like after I calmed, this stuff, but I looked at the mirror ready to see, and I was like, why is there no difference? Come on. I didn't change after every session, but I did after the first. And it was, I think I'm going to need a moment to pause after saying all that. I think I'm just going to need a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get it, babe. You get a moment.
Yeah.
I want to highlight a couple of different things that stood out to me. I know that we keep talking about these awesome therapists that we had. And, the reality is that this type of work, when you're going in and you're trying to unpack repressed things, when you're trying to go towards shadow, when you're really doing deep traumatic healing work, when I say it almost always, just rule on the side of it needs to be done with support.
Yes.
The fact is, I had tried to do this type of, when I say this type of work, I wasn't doing MDMA trying to heal myself. That's not what I'm saying. I was trying to do deep shadow work on myself for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to understand what was going on with myself. I was trying to heal. I was trying to fix what was ever broken with me. And it wasn't until I was able to really give into help and support. And luckily for us, it was safe help and it was healthy support, and it was exactly what we needed. And I think that's a really important thing, whether it's, this type of therapy, or there's plenty of other types of therapy that can get people to different places and to do different deep work. It doesn't have to be in conjunction with some sort of psychedelic or anything like that. It can, of course, right? We're big proponents of it, obviously, but help is necessary. And I don't even think when I say it's necessary, it's not just to make sure that it's safe, to make sure that you have support. All of those things are really crucial and key. But I think somebody else going into those dark places with you is the only way that it's okay to go into those places. Because it is so scary there. Because oftentimes it is the inner child. It is the versions of us that were completely defenseless, that had no ability to protect ourselves. And to have somebody else there who you feel safe with, even if it's like you were saying, right? She was sitting on the other side of the room from you. She wasn't sitting right next to you, supporting you in a sense. And I think that that is so important, because just somebody's presence in an unsafe environment can help you feel safe and can help you go into things in a more productive way, rather than, because my MO is I would always spiral out into the chaos of it all by myself, right? I would always get caught in the shame cycle of going towards some things, and that I couldn't ever figure out. I could never solve that by myself, because I don't think we're supposed to.
Yes.
I think we're supposed to go together when we go into these dark places.
Yeah. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And also, like, you have to allow, you said, like, safe people, right? And a good distinction for that is safe people, not people that you want to be safe for you.
Yeah,
like
you and I were not, like, it was very, not just because of our therapists, but I think we both knew too that, I think that's also why our couples session didn't work, because truthfully, there were a lot of parts of us that didn't feel safe with each other.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that on the podcast before, like recently, I think, where it's like, do you trust me? Well, parts of me don't trust you, right? And I think that that's I think that's why we only did one session together, because there were still too many parts of us that didn't feel safe around each other. And it's really, really important.
Yeah. And it was also like, we still had awareness of how much more individual work was needed. And like, you want to do like couples therapy and like, or a couple session and have it fix everything.
Oh, yeah.
But everything that's wrong in your relationship, even though things happened in your relationship, you're like, oh, I can pinpoint it because this happened during this relationship. But it didn't start there.
Yeah, I mean, that was my whole mindset.
Right.
That was my mindset too at the beginning of this process with our therapist. It was like, I was really in the mindset of fixing our relationship and healing our relationship. And if we can get our relationship fixed and healed, then life's going to be much better and much, this was where the issues lied.
Interesting.
Was in our relationship. And these two people were going to help us fix our relationship together. And this is what the process was going to look like. And I had a very kind of clear picture in my mind of where we were going to go and what was going to happen. And of course, none of that took place.
I was going to say, how much did that like? Right?
Well, eventually, right?
Right.
Eventually we got to the point where we're sitting today. And I feel, I dare say, I know I feel safer today. I feel safer with you today than I ever have before. And the parts of me that don't feel safe with you, or necessarily the parts of me that don't feel safe with you, they trust me enough to know that I'll keep them safe.
Yeah.
So I think that I can still, I think I'm able to go into some deeper places together with you than we've ever been able to go before.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had a lot here, huh?
There's so much.
I only went into like the first session. Your main focus we talked about was the last session.
Yeah, I don't, because that
and
was
then
such a big catalyst for me. A lot of my first couple of sessions was, I think, just kind of getting past our stuff, fleshing all of that out and recognizing that, that wasn't really important. That wasn't, and it's not to say it's not important, obviously, right? But it's like, that's not necessary. That's not where I need to look. That's not what I need to focus with. And then eventually it was like you said, right? Straight to the spot.
Right.
Straight to the place where, you want to heal? Go look there first. Yeah. That's where your core wounds lie. Go there.
It makes sense that you couldn't see that before. So the fact that you had to navigate around to heal, because all these parts had to feel safe. They did such a good job of hiding and concealing that wasn't in your junk drawer. That wasn't something that you could see. So there was so much work that had to be done and healing and trust that had to be built before they were like, okay.
Yeah, it was like my junk drawer had a hidden door.
Yeah.
And when you open up the hidden drawer underneath the junk drawer, that it was like, then suddenly the junk drawer made sense because you saw what was underneath it all.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too that they talk about is that, because I had memories that would start to come after that. And I'm like, whoa.
Oh yeah. That was go ahead.
Yeah. That, as you start to do this work, the metaphor that she used was it's like an iceberg. And so when you're doing, you have access to the top. And then as you start doing this work, or not an iceberg, it was like an ice cube or something, like a big ice thing, that it starts to melt. And the more work you do, the more it melts, the more access. So things start coming out, things start defrosting that you didn't know because they were so frozen and hidden, that you start getting these memories. And it's not like, you get good memories too. It takes a while, but you start to uncover parts, because when you're trauma locked and dissociated and all that, where you don't have access to so many sections of your life, you just you don't have access. You're like, access denied. It's not there. But there's also things of happiness. There's also points of details. There's things that you didn't have that now you have. And so that's also kind of scary as things start to melt and you start to get pieces, learn about, you start to remember people, you start to remember places, you start to remember things, experiences, moments, actions, all these things that start to come up, and you start to have better memory recall. As your brain isn't as, we're still got a lot of work to do there, but your memory starts to work better because you don't have that trauma response of not being able to have short-term memory. It was really bad for me, and it still is. Short-term memory is still something that's really difficult for me, and it's also long-term memory. There's still big blocks of my life I don't have yet. And there's parts of me that are like, yeah, they haven't come to serve. Maybe they don't need to, maybe they can just stay there. But there's more now that I do have and that I do have access to, which is really neat. And it still takes time, because after you start this thawing process, for me at least, it feels like even if I'm not doing MDMA therapy anymore, which I'm not, that the thawing process has begun. And little by little, like I could stop, I think, but I don't think I can. I'm not compelled. It's just I'm not willing to. I'm continuing healing. Every day I'm continuing the journey, and I'm starting to get access to the confident parts of me, the parts of me that I didn't think existed. I remember learning about what trauma responses are like, and I know just like trauma actions, but trauma personalities. And there was, like we were describing, and I'm learning through her, what this kind of reaction, this kind of personality style is a trauma response due to this experience. And I was all of them. And I was like, oh my God, my entire, like, it broke my heart, and it still does. I was like, my entire personality is a trauma response. And what it felt like to me, because every part of me, it was like all the hidden parts, all the out parts, I didn't think anything was like, there was nothing missing. So I'm like, what happens? There's nothing underneath it. They say, like, when you get to yourself, you get to this part, and that's where your true self is, under the trauma. And I'm like, there's nothing there. Everything that I am is a trauma response. Everything that I am is a trauma personality. It started just too young for me, and I'm not there. There's no light for me. If I peel all of these trauma responses off, there's nothing there. And it just made me feel so defeated, just completely defeated, but gross and wrong, and all the shame that comes up. And what started happening is I started trying to find ways to, I'm like, well, if nothing is there, what can I create, right? Nothing's there. How am I going to build this? If nothing's there, then I definitely want these trauma layers off. I don't want to be a walking reaction. I don't want to be a walking emotionally unwell person. So I've started trying to develop healthy habits. I started trying to develop healthy things, because, you can create a trauma response. Well, then why can't I create a healthy response? So I worked on that. And then somewhere along the way, and it's been a recent thing, I'm getting pieces of what is actually underneath those responses. And I'm having memories of little me that I didn't think existed, that was like confident, that knew they were strong, that felt able, that was just fiery, that had so much personality that I didn't think was there. And then when I'd heard it being referenced to, it was how difficult I was, how problematic, how, all of the negative things of what they told me that meant. And now I'm like, oh, you just couldn't handle me. And rightfully so, because you were not capable, not because I was wrong. Like, you weren't capable. And because you were inadequate in that space, you made me feel inadequate. And that was terrible of you. And that has nothing to do with me. So I like being able to access those parts.
That's amazing. That's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
That's been fun to witness and watch, because I mean, we're post 2 years out from this experience, right? Mm-hmm. And we're still in it. Mm-hmm. We're still processing. It was such a significant shift and change in our lives. Like you said, I don't think we'll ever go back. Like, I'm not interested in not working on myself anymore. Mm-hmm. Right. I think prior to that, I had the feeling of like, eventually I'll figure it out, heal it, open it up, get through it, and then life will be smooth sailing from that point on. Right. And yeah, that's just not the reality that I'm living in at this point, and I'm fine with it. And I don't say that just from like, I'm fine with it. Like, I'm really okay with having to continually, not even having to, getting to continually learn more about myself and unpack more and process more and heal more and understand more. And as all of those layers keep peeling back, getting to learn more about myself and who I really am. and what I really like and all of those kind of things. And that's been really beautiful to kind of witness and watch the version of you that has kind of burst forth from that experience. And the version of you that you are today is so different, even than 2 years ago when we first started the whole process of it. Do you feel different? I mean, I'm sure you feel different, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do feel different. And I was thinking, I was just thinking sync, babe. Like it's really, really neat to watch you. It's really neat to see all the things that are all of you, like unbecoming all the things that were never you, loving yourself for all the things that were never you, that you had to live through, and then starting to uncover who you are. Like, I like watching you. I like learning about you. I like when I get to learn something new about you. I like when you get to learn something new about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really beautiful.
It is beautiful. Yeah. Is there any more or any other part that you would like to share or get into?
I think I'm good for this episode. I feel more able and possible maybe to speak about it in the future now. It's been something that's been kind of, I didn't know how deep I was willing to go. I actually feel like I was present in this episode too. I don't feel like I checked out to talk about it.
Yeah, that was a hard part or a scary part. I feel like I did too for the most part, meaning I was in my body for the most part talking through this. I could feel moments where I was like wanting to bail and get out of here. And we did not do that. We did the other thing. We did the other thing where we stayed present and connected to ourselves in order to talk through this. And it's so funny too at the end of the day because we're just sitting here talking, right? However, I mean, we've done lots and lots and lots of podcasting and we don't record these live. This isn't going out anywhere. It's always so funny to me to sit in our studio, which is inside of our house, talking into these microphones with each other. Like, there's nobody that I feel safer with than you in my life right now. And it's still incredibly challenging to have some of these conversations. That's just trauma.
Yeah.
That's complex trauma.
It is complex trauma. And there's also the point too that we just don't end the conversation here. And it was one that we had with each other. Like, we share them.
Yeah.
We share them for all of you to hopefully have some part of your puzzle clarified, seen, get curious, spark a possibility, spark interest, hold that mirror.
Yeah, there's hope, right?
So much hope.
I mean, the level of complex trauma that we both have is great. There's a lot. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
And this was a really big answer for us and a really big key for us. And our hope is that, I mean, it was so, on one hand, it was really devastating to hear the news about MAPS and how it was shot down by the FDA because of how impactful it is. And if you go and research MAPS and you hear about it and the experiences that, I mean, they've done so many clinical studies at this point and so many actual, case studies with people, and it literally changed where you go through MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD, for the treatment of PTSD. I can't remember the percentage of it, but there's a huge percentage of people that would no longer fit the criteria for PTSD after the fact, right? It's so life-changing. Right? It's literally life-changing. This was our experience. This is what we went through. And you can tell, and from the experience of it and what we talked about, it quite literally changed our life. Right. I think had it not been for that experience and for that therapy, I don't think we would be together today. No, I really don't. I think that too much of our shit and too much of our traumas and too much of our pain from our past and everything like that was very much affecting our relationship, was very much getting in there and hurting our relationship in so many ways. And some of the codependency and the co-narcissism and all these other things that we've talked about on the podcast in recent episodes, that stuff was, really taking our relationship and running it off into the ditch. And had it not been for this work with our therapists and being able to go back and really not just heal the core wounds, but everything that we've shared, everything that we've talked about, it's life-changing. It's life-changing.
I think on top of our relationship, we wouldn't be together. I don't think I would be here without it. I don't think I would be here. Now, granted, there's no way to know, luckily. Like, how fortunate that there's, like, I don't know that for sure, that nobody knows that for sure right now. But how I felt all the time, and how far it actually got. I don't think I would be here without it. So I am like, what you talked about, the markers, like for instance with PTSD, where you go through this therapy and how then you're not meeting the markers.
Mm-hmm.
They're not saying that with antidepressants, antipsychotics. It's keep taking your meds. And I'm not saying not to take your meds. Like, if that's, but the point that I'm making with this is there's something that has the potential that they've shown is effective over and 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 over again. He's been doing this study for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Something that has been effective is happening, is working to where you don't need these other medications, but the FDA shuts it down.
Yeah.
So that's just something to think about. That's something that I have my theory on. And I think, as much as like you wanted to talk about this, and I'm seeing how important it is, like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the things that they want to shut down. Let's talk about, and that goes to so many different areas in the world. If they want to let's talk about it. Let's just talk about it. Everybody start talking, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't even know what to look for. Like, this wasn't something that I even knew to look for until
you heard about it.
Until I heard about it. Until I knew to look for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was just a shot in the dark, starting to go on a Google path, just a shot in the dark, because surely it wasn't going to be accessible to,
Yeah.
And then it was. And then there was places and there was people, and one thing led to the next, and always do your own due diligence, do what's right for you, talk to people, have a plan, have this. But for us and for so many people, it has been not only life-changing, but life-saving.
For sure.
Yeah.
I would totally agree. Go, you can learn more at MAPS. It's maps.org is their website. Support anything that they're doing, because I believe that eventually, right, it's only a matter of time until it's quote unquote legalized, and then they're able to offer it in a therapeutic setting. All of those type of things. It's going to happen. And
yes.
MDMA is just one of the psychedelics that is being used right now. They're doing lots of work with psilocybin. With ketamine, like you mentioned earlier. All of these medicines are really, really, I think it's part of why they were created.
Right.
Right.
We both have had that, like you said, the positive effects from psilocybin. I haven't experienced ketamine, but I've heard we've heard really good things. Grapevine, and like, I know somebody that was a friend of mine. I knew her before she became a facilitator for ketamine-assisted therapy, and now she is, and what it's done for her and what it's doing for the people that she has the ability to help. So there are options out there. This one was heavily talked about MDMA, because there are things that there's other ways than. There's possibilities. We have possibilities. We just have to, we start somewhere. Yeah. Somewhere.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Go to our website. It's stephandcraig.co at our website. I don't know why I threw up our website. Anyways, just thanks for listening, everybody. We'll go. Let's just go. I'm hungry. Let's go eat some lunch.
Okay. Let's do it. Are you ready? You get to start it today.
Expect the best.
Plan for the greatest.
We'll see you all very, very shortly on another episode of The Steph and Craig Show.
Take a chance, we got a wild ride. Wait and see, you and me, we were meant to be.
We want to make something perfectly clear. This podcast is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as a substitute for professional advice. We're sharing with you our own personal experiences and insights. Things we have found to be helpful on our healing journey, but we are not licensed therapists. If you need help, it's important to seek out a qualified professional. Remember, we believe that we all do better when we heal together. See you soon.